So in the run-up to me deciding to leave, about a year before, because I'd started to do international conferences, I then started to meet all the top people, the Stanton Friedmans, the Roger Lears, and basically all the people I thought were good guys. And I was an advanced interviewer of suspects and witnesses, and basically I was pretty good at sussing out people. And all the people I liked and respected in the field, I then said, look, I've had this idea for this magazine. I want to create an international, an English language, multinational English language e-zine. And the ironical thing was that if you'd have said just 5 years earlier about doing an e-zine, e-zines weren't in vogue then. Tablets weren't invented, smartphones weren't invented with scalable text and everything. But by the time I come up with the idea, e-books were very popular on Amazon and whatever, and the tablet technology, smartphone technology, it made it, people were happy to read off a screen in a way that they used to hate reading off a laptop or something like that. So it made it accessible. So I went to them and said, look, I've had the idea, would you either give a regular article as a regular columnist, or occasional contributor send me articles? And literally everybody I went to said, great idea, and that's where we started. So right from the off, you know, we had a really high quality, and what I wanted to also do was get people around the world, English language, like Susan Hanson I'd met, who was the top researcher in New Zealand. So she said, yeah, regular columnist. Mary Rodwell, who's one of the top researchers in Australia. Bill Chalker, Australia, he's Australia's top researcher. AJ Javard, who runs the Brazilian magazine. Brilliant English speakers. I get jealous about all the languages because I can't, but they speak brilliant English. And anyway, so I wanted to have a broad church of English speakers, but from other countries. And literally, over the 5 years now, we're just coming up to the 30th, the 30th issue, which will mark 5 years, 6 per year. Some have dropped off being regular, and they've become occasional. Others have come forward and come back, and it just evolves. But we have a very good lineup, and you know, when you talk about the likes of Dave Hodgins, a regular columnist, Andrew Johnson has written for the magazine, Stanton Friedman, Nick Redfern's a regular columnist, Bill Chalker, they're still doing that. And so we have a really broad range of researchers, and so far so good. You know, it goes all around the world, and everybody's very happy with it. So that's where we're
conferences as well that you.
Oh well, that was a spin-off of things that I never anticipated, and I never set out with the idea of doing conferences. But when I launched the magazine, I thought, well, I'll just test the water. And we started in the April, and I thought, well, I wonder if we could, you know, do one in 2013. And of course, I lived at that time actually in the town of Holmfirth, which is a couple of miles away. And there was, I looked for a kind of a biggish venue, and there aren't many, but I thought, well, I don't want to get too big a venue because I don't know how many people I'm going to get. So we literally, there's a hotel called the Old Bridge Hotel, which is where I put all the speakers for the conferences that I subsequently have gone on to do. But literally, at that time, before it was refurbished, they had like a function room for about 100 people. So I tried it in there, and it was sold out. And it kind of went all right. Tim Good spoke at the first one, Dave Hodgin at the first one, myself, and Larry Warren from Rendlesham. So it went down really well. I thought, well, I can do this. But then I needed a bigger venue, so I then went to the Civic Hall, which can do like, well, initially I went to, there's a room upstairs like 120. We sold out that. And then we went to the main room, which is like up to 300 people. So we sold that out. So yeah, it's something I never anticipated, and again, it was great, a great byproduct, as it were, of the magazine, because it also allowed me to invite people like Stanton Friedman, Roberto Panotti from Italy, Mary Rodwell, Susan Hanson, get them over here, and I didn't want to go to a bigger venue, because Holmfirth, if you've not been to the town, is a lovely little touristy place, well known for Last of the Summer Wine. I didn't want to go beyond that, because the Civic Hall is literally 400 metres from the centre of the town. It's got lots of lovely cafes, restaurants, bars. It's a very picturesque place, and you wouldn't get that. I've been to loads of conferences that have had much bigger venues, but there's no infrastructure around them during the breaks. Whereas now it's become so popular, we take over the town in September. If you've have you been to the conference before?
Yeah,
right. Well, in a sense, from Friday night, people are booking all the B&Bs, apartments, hotels. They love me now because I'm bringing extra people into the town. And at first, I think they thought, "Oh, is this strange guy, UFOs?" But now it's become part of the scene, and all the cafes love it now because they're packed. Because but what I really tried to do is to bring like a family atmosphere and get like-minded people together. So literally Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the town's abuzz, and you get all these people who can freely talk about the subject that they're passionate about in a non-threatening way, that they're not going to get ridiculed. And it's like now just become accepted. And in some ways a dream kind of like would be to do a week-long conference where you'd like have a Roswell festival. I don't think that's going to happen, because if you think about Roswell was a major event. We don't have a major event here, but it'd be nice one day to do that. But I do two conferences. We do a Southern Conference one in Watford, a one-day one, and this will be the 3rd anniversary of that. And they've gone down really well. And we do the main 2-day one in the September. So all in all, it's been a very kind of a strange, circuitous route to where I am now. But if somebody had have told me that you'd end up doing what I'm doing now, I'd have laughed at them, because. And I've talked to a lot of other top searchers, and they've had strange experiences, and they've said they're on some kind of a journey, and they feel as if they're being compelled to do what they're doing, and people who get involved in this feel compelled in a way, and that's all I say. Other people do things in certain ways, but I think the fact that I come from an evidential background was maybe. And I'm not religious, but somebody said you've got to do your part evidentially wise, and other people do other things. People go into radio shows and whatever. But you're doing what you're doing. Something compels you now in your life to pull you two together.
We spoke about this. It's a feeling to think. Do it,
Well, I've met up with somebody who's like-minded. I want to do this. Shall we do this? And then you find that you're on your own journey. So everybody's got a part to play. But that's literally my story, as it were.
It does feel like almost like a spiritual quest, doesn't it? Like you feel,
it does. I'm not religious in any way, but there is a spiritual element, because it's the only. It's if somebody had said, "Do you believe in fate?" I would have said no many years ago. But if somebody says, do you think there is such thing as fate and maybe some kind of guiding hand? Then I'd say yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because too many strange things have
Yeah.
happened to me
Yeah.
to get me to where I am doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think there is a spiritual element to it.
Yes, we agree with that.
Yeah, because I mean, when I said we did an interview together, Johnny and I, about my near-death experience, and in that time, I actually saw things like Russia, and I'm married to a Russian lady.
Okay.
But I didn't realise why. I thought, why have they been shown Russians?
Because you're only 14, weren't you, at the
14
time?
at the
So
time.
yeah, you wouldn't have done.
I was only 14. I was thinking, like, why have they been shown Russian places? And I've been to Russia many times. And so so things sometimes I'm upset out. I feel.
Oh yeah, and I think what happens is that little pieces of jigsaw fall into place many years later. You know, and you don't see the relevance at the time, but then something down the line, you think, actually, that falls into place. Yeah, so I think that I think certain people may well be chosen in this field. I don't know of any other field, but certainly in this field, I've talked to a lot of people who have had similar experiences, and they seem to be chosen, compelled to do what they're doing, and that's what I try to do now. I see my role as not to kind of reach the people that go to conferences, because they're already the people who've got an open mind enough to make the decision to go. I'd like to reach all the people on this street, and that's where my frustration comes in, because there is, I think, so much circumstantial evidence that if only the public was shown through the mainstream that circumstantial evidence about a whole manner of things, whether it be forbidden history, 9/11, space anomalies, whatever. All of these things would make people realise that the world isn't quite as it's portrayed to be. And that's the key. So my frustration is, let's try to build a way through using the media. Some people in our field don't want to use the media because they want to have that control. But you'll never get that control. So you have to operate within the mainstream, but still push your agenda. And we are moving closer towards disclosure, but it won't be, I don't believe, disclosure will come through any UFO researcher or any group of UFO researchers, because we're not powerful enough. We're not together enough. We don't have financial backing. You'd need billions. You need if something like Richard Branson said, well, I believe in UFOs and I'm going to promote you through my channels, well, you'd have a chance then, because you'd have his unlimited wealth. But we don't. So it will either come from them, or, as I suspect, it will come through mainstream technology, radio telescopes, where they've said in 2013 that by 2033 they predict that they will have detected an intelligent signal. So I looked at that and said, well, actually, that's the mainstream saying that. So really, the disclosure clock is already ticking by 2033, if they're right. And here we are, already 5 years into that. So we're already on the road. And I think all the kind of revelations that come out almost monthly about Pluto, water on Mars, ice caps and whatever, it's overwhelming that life is out there. From a mainstream perspective, it's just a question of finding it. They still ignore what's at the doorstep, the UFO side, in the mainstream, but it's coming and it will come, and I think that within 10, 15 years it will happen, but I think it will be a breakthrough in terms of the mainstream and the way they present it. But once that house of cards topples, it will be very quick then. Because it'll be like a dam busting, and then everything will come forward, and then they're going to have to re-educate people about the truth that we've known about for a long time, and the way the subject was covered up. So I think that in the process of that run-up to that mainstream acceptance, I think within maybe 7 or 8 years, TV companies are going to be thinking, we have to start telling the truth now. We have to start, because we're going to have contact.
There seems to be more through the mainstream feeding.
There's a lot. Almost weekly now, you're getting stuff in the Daily Express, Daily Mail, Daily Star. So there's albeit some of it's sensationalistic.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of stuff that's going out there that never used to be in this country, and I think that's indicative of kind of preparing the public that there is going to be contact at some point. But it's coming, and if they haven't made preparations, it will come as an amazing shock for a lot of people who've been told there's nothing to this and we're all fools.
We're still looking,
But I think time is coming. Within, say, 10 years, I think you'll start to see proper documentaries made on the mainstream. People like ITV, who do a terrible job, BBC do a terrible job as it is at the moment on these kind of fringe subjects. But they're going to have to change their ideas because the world is going to change.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's my story, as it were. Any good for you?
Very
Fantastic.
good. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to ask about, because obviously you've been on mainstream as well. I've seen you on
This morning. This morning.
Yeah. And what did you think to that?
Well, what you got to realise is that there's always a backstory. And the way, because it was live TV, it's very rare you get somebody like me who knows what the truth is on live TV for obvious fear reason. He might tell the truth. And that programme, when it came out, I saw it as a real opportunity to try to get some key points out there. Well, I knew that I was going to be manipulated. They were going to try to minimise you. And if you remember, the first interview was on February 2012, and there was three of us: Chris French,
yeah.
and abductee, Bridget was with us, and there was me. But I'd already said to Bridget beforehand, look, I'm going to try to cut in over you a little bit because I want to kind of like put a challenge out. Now, as daft as it sounds, and I'm sure when you meet me now, you don't see the person that's on the TV camera there, because that person is quite surly, quite angry, but that was done deliberate. And I'd practiced in front of the mirror on short, sharp, 10, 15 second sound bites, because I wanted to provoke them into inviting me back. So if you watch that again, that's exactly what I was like. I was surly, I was this, let me show you the evidence, blah, blah, blah. And they fell for it. But that is not me. But it was done very deliberately. And they invited me back. And, at the end of that first show, because we're arguing with Chris French, at the end of the show, both presenters come over to me and they go, oh, that was great TV. All the cameramen go, oh, that's great. Wow. And he said, we should have you back all the time. And I said, well, just invite me back. So originally we had agreed after that first show to do 5 cases that I would present the evidence from around the world. Over the course of the next 2 months until April, when the second appearance was, they whittled that down to 3. And then by the time of the actual day, it was whittled down to 1. What do you want to do? So I did Rendlesham Forest, and it was just me and Chris French. And I don't think that went very well for him. But
it didn't.
Wonder
Have
why?
you seen it?
No,
all right. Well, the
no.
second one is, but again, I'm quite a bit surly, but not as much. But yeah, I don't think he comes out of it very well. And he was literally, and he told me off camera, he gets paid £500 a time to be the resident psychologist kind of thing on any kind of thing, whether it be ghosts, UFOs. And who's the fool? He makes loads of money. I didn't get paid anything for those appearances because I was in the police. But basically, he doesn't come out of it very well, I don't think, and he didn't really know the case very well. And he comes out with very silly arguments. But anyway, what you didn't realise is that they were frightened stiff of me by the time it came to April, because they knew that I was somebody who was quite confident and was willing to maybe not do things as they said. So in the run-up to that programme, you go into the green room, and that's where the guests are and whatever, but you then get pulled out and they said, right, you're going to say this, you're going to say it's so scripted. But what they didn't realise is that, like, I'd got some coins in my pocket, and I thought, oh, I'm going to do the triangle indentations here on the table, and they don't know that. So that was unscripted. And then I'd printed off a Photoshop photograph with a representation of where one of the objects was close to the farmhouse that Colonel Holt had pointed out to me. and they didn't know about that. So during the show, so go watch those, because you'll see when I pull the coins out and I go, the Geiger counts only peaked in these places. It's a graphic, and you can see like they're thinking, like, what the fuck's he doing? so anyway, and then when I get this picture out, I go, have you stood next to the Colonel Holt at the edge of the farmer's field, Chris? And he went, no. I said, well, I have, and this is what he told me. And showed it, and you can see the presenters like, what's he doing? And honestly, so that is the backstory. But yeah, watch those two. Watch the February one first, the Surly, really Surly, Provoke, Challenge, and they fell for it, and then watch the second one, and then watch the eyes of the presenters when I come out with the coins and come out with a photograph. It's hilarious, really.
On the 9th of February 2012, during our Supernatural Week, we posed the question, do aliens exist?
Well, debating the issue was Detective Constable Gary Heseltine, who says that he could prove in a court of law that aliens do exist, and psychologist and skeptic Professor Chris French.
Well, during that debate, a challenge was set.
When it comes to sighting, you say we have special trainings for sighting UFOs?
No,
no, that's what I'm saying.
What
So
a police officer's trained to do.
Right.
I'll put you a challenge. I'll give you some evidence, and I want somebody like Chris here to explain it to me.
Well, Chris, I'd love that.
Well, let's do it. That's it. We're booked. And here they are.
And here they are. Today we are looking at Gary's evidence from one case in particular, a case thought to be Britain's most famous UFO sighting, and one that hit the headlines at the time.
In late December 1980, a series of reported sightings of unexplained light and unidentified craft landings occurred in Rendlesham Forest, Suffolk. The two incidents took place in the vicinity of two former military bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge, which at the time were being used by the American Air Force. On the 26th of December, military personnel witnessed strange lights in the forest. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed, they went to investigate. It's reported that what they found was a small triangular-shaped metal craft with strange markings. 2 days later, the deputy base commander and a small group of men witnessed other strange lights through the forest trees, including a red sun-like light which moved about and pulsed. Despite witness accounts, the MOD did not investigate any further, as they didn't believe it was a threat to national security. Well, we've got Chris and Gary with us now. Welcome back, both of you.
Thank you.
And so we're going to do this as a sort of an argument, counter-argument, and we're going to start straight away with the first sighting, the early hours of the 26th of December 1980. Military personnel at these bases saw strange lights in the forest. Tell us about that first sighting.
Initially, two men out at the East Gate observed lights just above the forest top, about 300 metres away, the length of 3 football pitches. And basically they went out to investigate. They got very spooked by it, went back on the base, reported it to the control and asked for backup. Backup arrived, 2 more people came out, and then 3 of those officers went out into the forest, where they eventually, 2 of them eventually came across the landed object.
Now you have your evidence here is the Holt memorandum. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt logged what the security police patrolman saw the first night and gave his memorandum to the MOD, which is dated the 13th of January 1981. And this is, and you can see when you look at the this report here, individual report is seeing a strange glowing object in the forest, object described as being metallic in appearance, triangular in shape. I'll let you leave that up for a few seconds, and you can read that yourself. There you go.
So that's your bit of evidence on this, Chris. How would you counter that?
Well, we know that what caused this actual investigation in the first place was a fireball. It's a bit of natural space debris that's coming back through the Earth's atmosphere. It's very spectacular. It lasts 2 or 3 seconds, and it's very often confused for a possible plane crash. It looks a lot closer than it actually is. So that's what sparked the people to actually go into the forest in the first place.
How do you know that happened there above that?
We've got a record of
Right.
that. That was officially recorded by the British Astronomical Association at 2:50, very precisely.
How can you interrupt a triangle that is from here to where Philip is?
The triangle...
It was on the ground, he touched it, he
You're
walked
doing
around
it
it.
again. Please let me speak. I did let you
I'm
speak.
sorry, you can't...
The,
I'm sorry,
the,
the testimony is there.
the original sighting was of a fireball. Nobody's saying that the reports of a triangle were the same fireball. What then happened is they went into the forest, and basically what they were were scared, they were confused, they didn't know the terrain. It was their first time in the forest at night, and they were mistaking the Orford Ness lighthouse for...
Well,
sorry, go on, Bill.
Only the fact that, going back to the Holt Memorandum, it illuminated the entire forest with a white light, possibly a fireball, OK. The object itself had a pulsing red light on top and banks of blue lights underneath, says the witness.
This is based on the witness statements that didn't actually come out until several years later. This is what Holt's based his memorandum on. And the fact that they were reporting different colours. There's three different things involved here. There's the fireball. That's what makes it such an intriguing case. First, you've got the fireball. Then you've got the mistaking of the Orford Ness lighthouse, which accounts for much of what they were seeing. And some of the objects they were seeing were just simply stars. They were tired. They'd been out there for a long time.
Military personnel.
Yes, and there's many records of that. There's lots of stuff on Gary's website where they've been definitely explained as sightings of Venus, but Gary won't tell you that. Gary won't give you those links.
Let's Gary, you can come back on this one.
The whole case fundamentally bases on the Holt Memorandum. The Holt Memorandum was nothing more than a little brief. But one key thing here, let's look at... Holt went out with a team of men on that second night, 5 people. They're out there and an object, and he describes it on the audio tape, comes towards him. It stops 1,000 to 2,000 feet above him. It then shines down a laser beam at his feet for 20 seconds. They are all in awe. He's thinking, is it a communication? Is this a weapon? He's scared, really scared. Then it goes off, and it goes off to the sky. The sceptics will say this is a flying lighthouse.
No, this is not a flying lighthouse. It's not in the Holt Memorandum. You just show me where that is.
The Holt Memorandum was...
It is not in the Holt Memorandum as he's just claimed.
No, of course it wasn't. It was a brief.
It was something that was added
to the
later. And also, isn't it slightly weird that it wasn't in the Holt Memorandum? Wouldn't you think...
He didn't want to write it, full stop.
If that had really happened, the defence implications of that are staggering. And yet Holt, after this whole episode... doesn't include that in the memorandum.
He was scared for his career.
What about security police officer Jim Penniston, who apparently got close enough to touch the object? He said he carried out a 45-minute investigation, took plaster casts of the landing traces, which were on a tree, and he drew, and that's evidence again. He drew what he thought he saw.
The original drawing that he made on the night looks nothing like a triangular craft. It's a boxy type appearance. You can get links to it. If you go to that's a different drawing. That's a different drawing. If you go to Ian if you go to Ian Ridpath's website, you can find all the background detail on this. And Dr. David Clarke.
Dr. David Clarke, 14 times skeptic.
Unlike Gary, they don't deal just with one side of the evidence. They
deal with
both
the facts.
Sides. And they offer very convincing explanations. So, you know, in the case of the case by Penniston didn't actually make any claims about actually touching the craft until years and years later. And also Burroughs, who was with him at the time, says that did not happen. All they reported...
Burroughs said it didn't happen. Penniston made those claims years later.
Somebody's unreliable there, Gary. Which one is it, mate?
The bottom line is they were both very scared. They went out in the forest and they came across a landed object, something which you don't see every day. These are highly trained police officers. They saw it. They walked around it.
They were not police officers, Gary.
They were US Air Force police officers.
All right, but
Can I answer the question?
Carry on.
Right, so basically, he walked around it, he touched it, he described it as glass-like, it pulsed, there was no motors, it was triangular, he drew that in his police pocketbook. He went back to his base commander and he was scared. Who wants to say that they've seen a UFO? Because you ridicule it. Why do you think he doesn't say straight away to his commander, I've actually seen a landed craft. Oh, get out of it, you're a nutter.
Yeah.
So he played it down. He played it down. And then he was told, go back in daylight and see if there's any physical evidence. And he went back and he found the indentations.
Yes,
the indentations were 3 identical indentations. They were to the same depth, same size of depression. And when 2 days later Holt went out with his men, he had a Geiger counter. And it peaked right in that spot. It's not about how much it was, it's about how it spiked.
This is untrue. This is untrue. You can listen to the Holt tape.
Even Nick Pope said this.
Nick Pope knows nothing about radiation.
Who's Nick Pope? Nick Pope ran the MOD desk for between 91 and 94, and even he made investigations into the radiation, said it peaked. It was 7 times more.
He asked another person. He never left his desk. He never went to Rendlesham Forest. He never interviewed any of the first-hand
did a cold
witnesses.
case review for the MOD.
The people that did, what Nick did was to say, basically assuming that the Holt memorandum was accurate, which it wasn't. The Geiger counter they were using, as the manufacturers have confirmed, was the wrong sort to be using for that kind of measurement. The readings that they claimed to get were the bottom, lowest kind of possible measure that they
when they
could
put
get,
it in the landing site,
and they did not peak at the...
Okay, what
Let's
about...
leave it there for a second, yeah.
Let's move on to the second sighting that we had.
This
Please
is Holt's.
explain this to us, yeah.
Well, Holt sighted 2 days later. He's at a military function, a Christmas party, when basically he's told the UFO is back. He goes, what's back? The UFO's back. So he gets a team of specialists. He goes out with a Geiger counter, he goes out with cameras, he goes out with light holes, big light structures to light up the illuminated forest, and he went out with a star scope, which produces latent heat. Whilst he was out there, he basically, at the landing site doing the measurements, which we've just talked about, he then, somebody says, there's a light moving through the trees. Here's the key thing. The light was moving under the canopy of the forest.
So it couldn't be the light. Why didn't he take a camera if he was taking all that stuff?
The photographs came out fogged, but that could maybe be down to radiation.
Okay, so we just want to listen to the audio tape here, Chris, and then you can counter after
He was
that.
recording a live event,
Here we go.
series.
This is the audio recording from that night.
148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmers barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. What is it? Don't know, sir. So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. Is it back again? Yes, sir. Everything else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
There's no doubt about it that if you are out in those circumstances where you're scared, you don't know the terrain, you don't know what you're looking at, that anything that, for example, if there's a thin cloud cover passing across in front of the lighthouse, it would kind of dim it kind of gradually, and then it might appear more brightly, so it would look as if it's coming towards you or moving
We
away.
have another audio clip here about
and
the
lighthouses. This is crucial, because this evidence clinches the lighthouse argument.
Right on this position here, straight ahead in between the tree. There it is again. Watch straight ahead off my flashlight there, sir. There it is.
Hey, I see it too.
Chris?
Now, the synchrony there between what they're actually saying and the video of the lighthouse shows, it's 5 seconds exactly, that it shows that's what they were looking at. They didn't know what they were looking at. And under those circumstances...
Philip, he took his team out for 4.5 hours into the forest.
You can
4.5 hours?
See, here it is. This is how close the lighthouse is to the forest.
And this is taken from the exact position that they would have been at, with the farmhouse that they refer to here in the foreground.
Okay.
And the lighthouse is visible from that point.
Your turn.
Right. I stood with Holt. Have you stood with Holt at the edge of that farmer's field?
No, I've been to
I
the
have,
field.
and I've stood at the edge of the farmer's field from this perspective, and this is a drawing he gave me. A representation. When they followed the object underneath the canopy of the trees, they got to a farmer's field. Across they see the farmhouse. I said, where is the object in relation to the farmhouse? He describes it as a 15-foot off the ground, glowing red. The farmhouse looked as if it was on fire. That is, are you sure? Where is it? To the left of the farmhouse. Can you show me where the lighthouse is?
To the
right of the farmhouse.
Right.
It was not a lighthouse. Lighthouses not can fly and stop above your head and shine a beam down at your ground. Lieutenant Colonel Holt is one of the most highly respected men ever to go on record to say he saw multiple UFOs. And if all your sceptics' arguments stand up and say that it's a flying lighthouse, then good luck to you.
Nobody has ever said it's a flying lighthouse. Nobody's ever said that all of the sightings are explicable in terms of lighthouse. A lot of it is.
10 seconds each now to wrap it up, I'm afraid.
Right, if this really were true, why did he wait 2 weeks before he actually even put in a memorandum? If he actually left when he thought we were under alien attack. He actually left when he thought that nuclear weapons were being zapped by aliens. Did he really think it was an alien invasion? No, I don't think so.
I spent 4 years working with Holt. There is a film script ready to go. It's viable. I've written it. He's worked with it. It's endorsed by him. It's an amazing story, much more complicated than what we've got in this limited time. Thank you for letting me on.
Brilliant. That's fascinating. Absolutely.
And at the end of it, again, he said, the presenter, he said, we should have you back every week. Never been on since. No. and there's a funny anecdote about that, is that about 3 years ago now, out of the blue, a freelance journalist rings me up. She says, would you like to go on this morning? I said, oh yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, going to do a thing about UFOs. Would you be interested? Yeah, of course. I said, you do realise I've been on before? Oh no. I said, well, just give my name to them and see if they'll have me on. She rings me up about 3 days later and she says, no, they don't want you back. So in a way, those two appearances that aren't me, which is quite light-hearted, this is me, a light-hearted, have probably destroyed my mainstream TV career. But I think what comes from that is the integrity point of view.
Yes.
And they stand the test of time,
Yeah.
is that I tried to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I didn't play the game that they wanted me to play. So I have to live with that. But one day, if we have the dam break, then I'll do more mainstream.
But I mean, I think they just want someone in your position, something to ridicule almost, isn't it? That's
absolutely.
what they want, to downplay
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
And the fact that I was still a serving police officer and a detective meant it very hard for them to ridicule me. And in general, because of my background, I've not had the level of ridicule that other people have had. So I count myself lucky in that regard. And so, for me, it's been a more gentler. I've never, you know, because when you're dealing with a database of police officers, it's hard for them to ridicule police officers because everybody kind of knows a police officer at some point in their life. And the fact that the only really interesting thing is that when I started, I had 6 cases involving 10 officers. Now I've got over 550 cases involving over 1,100 police officers. When I started, the national media were all over me. This is interesting. National media don't go anywhere near me now. Which is bizarre because the more successful in life, usually you get more attention. But not in this.
But not in this circle, no.
And that's what I'm saying. You know, 1,100 police officers. You think it'd be like national headlines? They don't go anywhere near it. It's old news. Oh, is it? Then you realise that this is why I say that a lot of people just don't realise how much media manipulation there is, whether it be about human origins, forbidden history, politics, spin, you know, everything we take for granted
Science
is manipulated.
Science,
absolutely everything that literally you think about, the 9/11s of this world, you know, moon conspiracies, you know, space, literally you are only being given a very narrow view of things, and the real mysteries are never really told to you, or are just labelled as conspiracy theory, which is what we are.
Exactly.
Conspiracy. If somebody says to me conspiracy, it means that they're the people really trying to tell the truth. That's what conspiracy means. You're the truth seekers. And I think that's what
it's just a term.
It's just a term.
It's a term they use to so that people dismiss it.
They've turned it into a negative connotation. Whereas really, a conspiracy theorist is somebody who's actually giving you an opposing view, but backing it up. And the problem that we have is because the subjects are all dominated by the mainstream and the mainstream agenda, they manipulate space and time through restricting appearances and coverage to their agenda, and it's very powerful. Editing, I found over the years, is a very powerful tool, and you know, they can just cut out all the good stuff and make you look silly if you want.
They can, do, which they, we know they do. You know,
we've seen it,
I mean, they bring David Icke on, they give him 2 minutes, and
absolutely. Well, again, if you go to the Watford conference, there's a special interview that I did with David Icke. That's an exclusive, and that's like a 35-minute interview that we filmed in London with him. And I'd never met him up to that point, but really good guy, and it wasn't anything different from what I hoped he would be. You know, sometimes you meet famous people and they're not anything like, but he was really down to earth, really nice guy. So I think people will find that interesting.
And we talk about ridicule. He's had it for years and years.
Well, one of the stories that he will tell, and one of the questions I put to him is, said, "Did you know what you were going to say prior to going on to the Wogan show?" and he tells you the reason why that all came out in that way, the backstory, and that's a fascinating backstory.
We'll not spoil it because people will go see it.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you it now. I'm just saying that that was a deliberate question, because I wanted to know what was going on in his head, because he literally destroyed his mainstream life in one foul swoop.
It is,
and not many people would normally do that. But yeah, he tells you, and it's a very interesting story. And it's all things are all about context.
Yes,
in life.
Yeah.
And people talk about black and white, but there's lots of grey.
Yeah.
It isn't just as simple as
Yeah,
black and white.
exactly.
So yeah, if you get a chance to go down, go see it, and you'll have a couple of complimentary tickets, but you won't be allowed to film.
Okay, that's fine. No, we won't.
No problem at all. Yeah.
I'm just aware of time because it is past an hour.
Well, it's been fascinating, Gary.
Right,
Thank you
you're
very
welcome.
much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's great hearing, how you've been where you are now. It's a great journey.
Well,
and long may it continue as well.
I hope so. Yeah, definitely.
Well,
hopefully, I'm 58 now, so we'll see.
Still young.
Still young. 58 is the new 48.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gary.